Abreise nicht zurück sind, melden Sie es bitte Ihrem Vorgesetzten Mr. Kesho, dem Generalsekretär.
Falls sie nicht zurück sind? Wie furchtbar.
Listen up, because in 1978, Captain Future wasn't just another anime space opera. This was Toei Animation's ambitious adaptation of the classic American pulp science fiction hero, featuring some of the most spectacular space battle animation of the late 1970s, pulling massive ratings in Japan and Europe, and introducing audiences to a retro-futuristic aesthetic that combined 1940s pulp magazine sensibilities with modern anime production values. The show ran for 52 episodes across 2 seasons, aired in Japan, Germany, France, Italy, and dozens of other countries, generated millions in merchandise sales internationally, and created a character design and visual style that influenced European science fiction animation for decades. But here's the thing, it never aired in America, the country where Captain Future originated. The show became a massive international success while remaining completely unknown in its source market. So, what the hell happened? How did an American pulp hero become a Japanese anime phenomenon that Americans never saw? And why did this cultural translation work everywhere except where the character was born? How Japan reinvented an American pulp hero. Alright, so here's something most people don't realize. Captain Future was created in 1940 by American science fiction writer Edmund Hamilton for a pulp magazine series published by Better Publications. The stories featured Curtis Newton, also known as Captain Future, a brilliant scientist raised on the moon by 3 guardian mentors, a brain in a box, an android, and a shape-shifting robot. Together, they traveled the solar system, fighting evil and solving cosmic mysteries. The Captain Future pulp magazines ran from 1940 to 1944, were moderately successful in America, then faded into obscurity. By the 1960s, Captain Future was a forgotten relic of pulp science fiction history in the United States. But in Japan and Germany, something different happened. The novels were translated and remained popular with science fiction fans throughout the 1950s and 60s. German publisher Basté Verlag kept reprinting Captain Future stories. Japanese science fiction enthusiasts discovered the character through translations. While Americans forgot about Captain Future, international audiences kept reading about him. In the mid-1970s, Toei Animation was looking for properties to adapt for television. They wanted science fiction content that could compete with Space Battleship Yamato and other successful space operas. They looked at various Western science fiction properties and settled on Captain Future. Why Captain Future? Because the source material was old enough that rights were cheap and availability was clear, because the character had existing recognition in Japan and Europe, because the pulp science fiction aesthetic was nostalgic and appealing, and because the premise, scientist hero with quirky robot companions traveling the solar system, offered episodic adventure possibilities. Toei partnered with Dior Film, a German production company, to co-produce the series. The German partnership was crucial because it provided partial financing and guaranteed European distribution. This wasn't just a Japanese show, it was an international co-production from the start. The production budget was substantial, approximately $150,000 per episode, which was high for anime in 1978. That budget bought spectacular animation quality, detailed spaceship designs, elaborate space battles, fluid character movement, and gorgeous painted backgrounds depicting alien worlds. The character designs were handled by Shingo Araki, who'd later work on Saint Seiya. The mechanical designs were by Kazuhide Tominaga. The music was composed by Yuji Ono, who'd become famous for Lupin III. This was top-tier talent, creating what was meant to be a flagship science fiction property. But Toei made crucial changes to the source material. The original 1940s pulp stories were episodic adventures with simple good versus evil plots. Toei added more complex storytelling, deeper characterization, and serialized elements. They updated the science to be less ridiculous by 1970s standards. They gave the villains more nuanced motivations, and they kept the retro-futuristic aesthetic. Instead of modernizing Captain Future to look like contemporary science fiction, they leaned into the 1940s pulp design sensibility. Rocket ships looked like they were from Flash Gordon serials. Technology had Art Deco styling, The whole thing felt deliberately old-fashioned in a way that was charming rather than dated. Captain Future premiered in Japan in November 1978 on NHK and was an immediate hit. The show was pulling strong ratings, competing successfully with other popular anime. Kids loved the space adventures. Science fiction fans appreciated the faithful adaptation of classic pulp material. Within months, the show was being sold to European markets. Germany aired it in 1980, and it became a cultural phenomenon, one of the most popular anime properties in German television history. France, Italy, Spain, and other European countries followed. Captain Future became one of the most successful anime exports of the early 1980s. Everything looked perfect. Toei had created an international hit that was successful in Japan and Europe simultaneously. But there were problems that would prevent Captain Future from ever reaching the American market, where the character originated. Mistake number 1. The American market had no interest in importing it. Here's the brutal reality that kept Captain Future out of America. American television had zero interest in importing anime in the late 1970s and early 1980s. By 1978, the brief window when Japanese anime could easily enter American television had closed. Shows like Astro Boy, Speed Racer, and Battle of the Planets had aired in America, but they were seen as cheap foreign content, not as valuable properties worth investing in. American broadcasters in the late 70s were increasingly producing domestic animation or importing from established Western partners. Japanese anime was viewed as low quality, culturally foreign, and difficult to adapt for American audiences. When Captain Future was being sold internationally in 1979 to 1980, American distributors looked at it and saw multiple problems. First, the animation style looked distinctly anime. Big eyes, different aesthetic sensibilities, visual storytelling that felt foreign. American broadcasters wanted shows that looked American. Second, the retro-futuristic 1940s pulp aesthetic that charmed Japanese and European audiences looked bizarre and dated to Americans. The rocket ship designs, the Art Deco styling, the old-fashioned science fiction elements, American executives thought kids would reject it as old-looking. Third, and most bizarrely, the fact that Captain Future was originally an American character didn't help. American broadcasters didn't remember or care about 1940s pulp science fiction. The character had no recognition or nostalgia value in the US market. To Americans, this was just another weird Japanese cartoon. Fourth, the show's episodic but serialized structure didn't fit American syndication preferences. Broadcasters wanted either purely episodic shows that could air in any order or Saturday morning shows that could be tightly formatted. Captain Future was somewhere in between. Multiple American distributors were approached about licensing Captain Future for US broadcast. Everyone passed. The combination of anime aesthetic, retro styling, and lack of American market recognition made it seem like a bad investment. The irony is devastating. An American pulp hero adapted by Japanese and German producers became massively successful internationally, but couldn't get distribution in the country where the character originated because American broadcasters thought it was too foreign. Mistake number 2. The retro-futuristic aesthetic had limited commercial appeal. Here's the creative decision that limited Captain Future's commercial potential. The deliberate retro-futuristic styling that made it artistically distinctive also made it harder to merchandise and market. In Japan and Europe, the 1940s pulp aesthetic was seen as charming nostalgia. The rocket ships with fins and Art Deco details were viewed as appealingly vintage. The old-fashioned science fiction sensibility was part of the show's identity, but that aesthetic created problems for toy manufacturers. Kids in 1980 wanted toys that looked modern and cool. They wanted sleek spaceships like Star Wars vehicles or transforming robots like Transformers. Captain Future's finned rocket ships looked old-fashioned. Toy companies approached about creating Captain Future merchandise were skeptical. The Comet spaceship design was iconic, but didn't translate well to toy form. The character designs were fine, but the retro styling made them less appealing compared to more modern-looking properties. Some merchandise was produced in Japan and Europe. Model kits, die-cast ships, some action figures, but it never became a major toy line. The sales were modest compared to other anime properties of the era, And without strong toy revenue, the business model for continuing the franchise was limited. The show made money from broadcast rights, but not enough to sustain indefinite production. Toei needed either strong domestic ratings or international toy sales to justify continuing beyond 52 episodes. By 1979, Japanese ratings were good, but not spectacular. The European success was building but hadn't yet translated into massive merchandise revenue. Toei looked at the financial performance and decided 52 episodes was enough. The retro aesthetic that made Captain Future artistically interesting was the same thing that limited its commercial exploitation. Mistake number 3. The source material ran out and modernization failed. This is the structural problem that killed Captain Future's longevity. The show was adapting finite source material, and attempts to expand beyond it didn't work. Edmund Hamilton wrote 17 Captain Future novels and 3 shorter works between 1940 and 1944. That was it. That was all the source material that existed. Toei's 52-episode series adapted most of Hamilton's stories, sometimes combining multiple stories into single-story arcs, sometimes expanding single stories across multiple episodes. By the end of 52 episodes, they'd exhausted the best source material. To continue the series beyond 52 episodes, Toei would have needed to create original stories not based on Hamilton's work. They attempted this with a few episodes, bringing in Japanese science fiction writers to create new Captain Future adventures. The original episodes were fine, but they lacked something the adapted episodes had. Hamilton's pulp storytelling had a specific energy and sensibility that was hard to replicate. The new episodes felt more generic, less distinctive, and there was creative tension about how to evolve the show. Some at Toei wanted to modernize it, update the science, change the aesthetic, make it more contemporary. Others wanted to preserve the retro pulp appeal that made it special. This creative indecision meant no clear vision for where to take the property beyond the source material adaptations. Without strong direction and with source material exhausted, continuing production seemed risky. Toei decided to end Captain Future at 52 episodes, rather than risk diluting the property with potentially inferior original content. Better to end on a high note with faithful adaptations than continue with uncertain creative direction. European phenomenon, American unknown. Here's what makes Captain Future's legacy so bizarre. It's a beloved classic in Germany, France, and Italy, while being almost completely unknown in America and even somewhat forgotten in Japan. In Germany particularly, Captain Future became a cultural institution. The show aired throughout the 1980s and into the 90s. Multiple generations of German kids grew up with it. The theme song by Christian Brun became iconic. The show influenced German science fiction storytelling and visual aesthetics. German science fiction fans reference Captain Future constantly. It shaped how an entire generation of Germans thought about space adventure. The retro futuristic aesthetic became deeply embedded in German pop culture. The same thing happened in France and Italy to lesser degrees. Captain Future was a major anime import that defined what anime meant for many European viewers in the early 1980s. In Japan, Captain Future was successful during its original run, but gradually faded from prominence. It's remembered fondly by fans who watched it in the late 70s and early 80s, but it's not part of the top tier of iconic anime, the way shows like Yamato or Gundam are. And in America, virtually non-existent. Most American anime fans have never heard of Captain Future. American science fiction fans who know the original 1940s pulp stories have no idea a Japanese anime adaptation exists. There's this parallel universe of pop culture where Captain Future is a formative cultural touchstone, and it's completely invisible from the American perspective. When cultural translation works everywhere except the source. So here's the thing about Captain Future. It's a case study in how cultural products can have completely different values and meanings in different markets. An American pulp hero forgotten in America became a beloved icon in Germany through Japanese animation. The cultural translation that seemed natural to Japanese and European audiences seemed foreign and weird to Americans. Captain Future proved that anime could successfully adapt Western source material and sell it internationally. It proved that retro-futuristic aesthetics could appeal to modern audiences if executed well. It proved that international co-productions could create commercially successful content. but it couldn't prove that success in international markets translates to success in the source market. American broadcasters rejected Captain Future not because it was bad, but because it had been transformed through cultural translation into something that no longer felt American. The show exists in this strange space where it's simultaneously a forgotten American character and a European cultural phenomenon. The source and the adaptation exist in parallel universes that barely acknowledge each other. So that's the rise and international success, an American absence of Captain Future, a Japanese anime adaptation of American pulp science fiction that became a European cultural phenomenon while remaining completely unknown in the country where the character originated. If you grew up in Germany or France and Captain Future was formative for you, you're living in a completely different cultural universe than American anime fans who've never heard of it. Drop a comment and tell me where you discovered this show, because that geography will determine whether you have fond memories or complete confusion. And if you're not subscribed yet, there's a lot more international animation history where this came from.